Okay, it's live. We're here. All right, I'm Ben Bates, probably best known for drawing Sonic the Hedgehog and Ninja Turtles 15 years ago.
I'm Chris Staggs, best known for, oh, I don't know.
Working in the animation industry
Yes, I
as a storyboard
guess.
artist.
There you go.
Okay, so we're discussing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Phantom Blood, Chapter 1. I am familiar with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I've already read Phantom Blood. Did you know what JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is?
I mean, I've heard of it. I think it isn't. We were reading didn't the guy write a book? The creator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Hirohiko Araki, and I have that book somewhere, but not offhand. Did you buy it? I can't remember.
I bought it digitally.
Okay, yeah, I got the physical version, and it's one of the few books that I've ever found discussing about a manga creator actually talking about the process of creating manga, which is super cool.
Yeah. No, I think I read probably like 80% of it and really liked. I really liked it. So I mean, I knew about JoJo from that a little
Yeah.
bit, but I don't know anything about the story at all. So
Yeah,
it's
I
all new.
think I originally learned about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. My buddy imported the Capcom 2D fighting game for Dreamcast back in the late 90s. And that's where I first got my experience with JoJo. But I didn't read any of the manga or watch any of the anime until like just a couple years ago. And like most things, I like starting with the very beginning. So even though, I mean, depending on Phantom Blood, which is this is the start of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But what most people know and like what the 2D fighting game and stuff is based on is a later arc where it like reached its peak popularity, and that's like sort of the main idea when people talk about JoJo's, but it's got a whole bunch of different arcs to it. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, that's why I wanted to start with the very beginning before we ever get to what JoJo is mostly known for. All right, so we read chapter 1, and I start everything if I can by pirating things to find out if I actually like it or not before I purchase a physical volume of stuff. So obviously I ended up loving it, and I have since purchased a number of physical volumes. So we're going to compare as I understand it, most of the, like it says right here at the top on these credits, that the translation is done by, these aren't like the official translations that we're reading when we see this stuff online. And we get to compare the choices that were made by somebody who translated it to what the official translation was. And I think there's a lot of really interesting differences there. Okay, so let's jump into it. First and foremost, I don't know, do you want to say how you feel about chapter 1 at the start, like what you came away with, or do you want to wait for that until we get to the end?
Let's wait.
Okay. All right, so the first thing I'll say right here, so this is page 1, and I like to do the 2-panel test, right? The first two panels engaging and interesting. But before we do that, I just want to point out, and this unfortunately is just not working very great, but in the actual manga, these are colored. So the color pages, which is cool just to see the difference. Now, like I said, this isn't looking super great. There we go. So panel 1 here. You can see that the background is blue, but so is this, what we can assume is a crude knife. Yeah. So in the black and white version, the knife is very apparent, but because the knife is blue and the background is blue, they're sort of bleeding together, robbing it of its prominence that we actually got. And then in this next, you can see that the hand and the knife are more of a yellowish color, helping it pop. I just don't know why he didn't make that choice in both, because it would have really popped that knife rather than helping it sink into the background.
Yeah.
But in the black and white version, it's really apparent. Bam, you have it. Wham, wham. So one of my rules of thumb, my thumb, when it comes to storytelling, doesn't matter if it's a television series, a comic book, whatever, is if you start a story with a sex scene or like a sexy lady in this case, I'm immediately apprehensive to say, like, okay, do you actually have story, or are you just so desperate to get my attention that this is what you're hoping the audience will grab onto? So that's just my personal feeling. The moment I see a sexy lady like this, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work out. What are your thoughts? What, when you first saw this page, bam, what happened?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's like a good general rule to go by. It's kind of a cheap hook, right?
Yes.
I'm curious how old he was when he started this.
That's a good question. Let's look it up real fast. Hirohiko Araki. So he was born in 1960, and Jojo started in the 80s, but let's find out exactly when that, if Wikipedia can be trusted. It started in
Wikipedia is never
1987.
wrong.
Yeah. So if it started in 1987, he was born in 1960, that would make him what? 32 when it happened? 27 years old. So he was 27, presumably, when he started this. Somewhere 26, 27, something like that.
And had he done anything before this, you know?
I don't know. Let's see what his biography says. So, he made his debut in a Wild West one-shot called. Oh yeah, I did check this. That was there were some pages of that in his how to like how he makes manga book. Poker Under Arms is his first work, and then his first serialization was Cool Shock BT. So he had done one story at least in 1983. Then he did, but his first display was Boa in 1984. Which was adapted into an anime, and I did see that when I was young, back in the 90s. Got it from Blockbuster. And then it wasn't until The Gorgeous Irene in 1985 that his signature art style started to become part of his work. So he'd done multiple stories, it looks like, which is cool. I haven't read any of these. I would love to go back and check him out to see his growth. Okay, but so now we know that this is not his immediate first work. We know that this is his fourth at least. Does that change your opinion of anything?
Well, I guess the reason that I ask is because it seemed like like he wasn't fully developed yet. So like got some some stuff looks pretty good, and then other stuff looks
it's pretty
amateurish.
Yes.
Like
Excuse me.
Getting there,
I agree 100% that there's a lot of nice drawing in this lady,
sure,
right? There's some solidity to it. But in a second, or this hand, this hand's not 100% right. There's a little bit of wobbliness into his, but in the next pages we'll definitely see where some weakness in the drawing.
Yeah.
But I'll say in my own experience, when I was 26, 27, I was 26 when I very first started professional comics. That's when I first started drawing Sonic. But I was still so far behind in drawing. I had so much more to learn about how to draw. And I was learning on the fly, and thank God I was part of Periscope Studio, and especially Dustin Weaver was teaching me how to use perspective and stuff. I just used to make this eyeball it, I didn't know that there was such a thing as horizon lines and grids and vanishing points. And so I try not to, I always try to remind myself what I was like when I was 26, and that this is probably about my skill level in some ways.
For sure. Well, yeah, I mean, and basically anything that I say is not, I mean.
Yeah, no, you're pointing out the truth, right? There is weakness very much so present in this work, and he will get much, much stronger as he continues to draw, which is cool. It's going to be exciting to see his growth through the work. That's part of what's interesting about seeing people's long-term storytelling. All right, so one big thing before we go to the next page. So because I was looking at that colored version, which really helped me think about the knife disappearing and talking about doing the 2-panel test. Is this interesting? So first and foremost, I'm a little worried, but this is interesting, right? We do one panel with an attractive lady, and then we reveal, and of course we got the knife up there. We reveal that she's on this stone slab with some fire around. The dude's holding the knife. But it made me think okay, if I could have done anything differently here, I would actually remove the knife from panel 1. So that way that becomes new information in panel 2, right? So panel 1, attractive lady, we don't know exactly where she's at or what's happening to her. And then we reveal, oh, she's in danger, right? like boom, knife. So
Yeah.
we don't actually get too much, like we're getting a repetition of information. The only new information we get on number 2 is her location tied to the slab, right? Like we can tell that her hand, this might be bracelets, but given the, we could guess that she's bound in panel 1. Anyway, I'm just saying I would love to remove the knife from panel 1 there and get brand new information in panel 2.
Sure. Well, it's a little inconsistent too, because I mean, you got the knife on the left side there, and then and it's like up by her head, and then
exactly.
the
Then it
panel,
backs up. That's another reason. And we're about to see in this next panel where he raises it up over her. Where that's what we already get, that it's raised up over her here. So it's like he's there, like I'm gonna stab you. That's the storytelling we're getting. And then we back up, and then we go back to, okay, I'm gonna stab you. So that's another reason to axe out that knife for sure from panel 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get new information. We get a new character, and so this is 3 panels, and this is what I like about like storytelling tests of the 2-panel test. Like the first page happens to be just 2 panels, but like, is there story happening? Are we moving forward? And it doesn't have to be like super crazy story, but there is story. Woman tied up, man with knife. He raises knife. He's got the crazy mask on. He's enormously muscular. He's presumably going to kill her. This is story happening. I'm engaged. Were you engaged at this point?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we scroll down. Boom! He stabs her. We are not playing around here, right? Like, mini stories, a girl is in trouble, but she's never actually in danger. But this, bam! Panel 4. Go ahead.
That surprised me. I was like, oh, okay.
that she's actually doing. Yeah. So she gets stabbed. Bam! It splatters on his face. Mask. Big huge panel up of the blood being soaked in to the mask. Was that clear to you?
Yeah, I think I got it.
And then
it's nice that the sound effects are in
Japanese
still, but I would like to know what they say.
Okay, so this is where this comes in so handy, having the actual the official English translation. So unfortunately, it won't be that clear to you, but until we figure out how to do this well. Yeah, unfortunately, that just sucks. Okay, I'm gonna have to tell you. So in the actual official translation, it's still those Japanese sound effects with the little English sound effect next to it, letting you know. So for example, this panel where she's getting stabbed, that is translated as, and then in the second, this next vertical panel with the blood splurting, it is just splurt. And then we get slurp, slurp. And like, that's what I dig about this, like the way that the Japanese, that little line at the bottom, little squiggly line, it's, like you're getting that sense of like just that little wobble on that line gives a sense of it, slurping up. Anyway, in my head, it does that. And now
that's an informative sound effect. Like it tells you that it's absorbing the.
Yes. Okay. So now here's the first big difference that I wanted to start covering with in terms of translation and choices, because what I've discovered is I actually like a lot of this unofficial translation more than the official translation. So in this first panel, blood is life. That's the same in both of them, right? You can't really see it, but he says blood is life in that first big panel. But when we get here is the first, and a lot of times the official translation seems to be going for additional clarity. So in the original, we have fresh blood of a maiden will be absorbed by the mask, whereas the other one is the blood of this fair maiden fills the many fine cracks in this stone mask. So we're going into what I think of now. We don't know if this is actually more accurate to what was written in Japanese. Like maybe in Japanese it says many fine cracks in the stone mask, right? And that could be true. That could be what Araki had there. But this comes off to me as more like comic book writing, where especially like traditional comic book writing, where comic book writers would describe in the dialogue or in the captions what we're also seeing. Right? And so what I dig in the unofficial version is that it's not trying so hard to tell you everything in the dialogue.
Right. Yeah.
And so the demonic mask, this is the unofficial, the demonic mask will come to life from the blood of the living. The mask comes alive when it drinks the blood of the living. So it's just these little touches that do actually have to me an impact when I'm reading it. But we'll get further into that when we go along. All right, so we got this big, huge mask, and the sound effects here are scritch, 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 because it's like we're getting presumably the stone elements starting to move, which is implied by these nice wobbly lines. All right, we got these things shooting out of the mask, stabbing into the head, and all right, let me ask you this. So we're only a couple pages in. There is no indication of like time. Like there's no saying, it doesn't say what year this is. It doesn't say what part of the world this is. So what is your interpretation at this point when you were reading it?
I was a little confused as to what was going on. Not just like through this part, even further into it. Yeah. I mean, I understood what was happening moment to moment, right? But like you said, like where is this? Like what and all that. Actually, like the first 3 panels there, it's like I got it, but it's also like not the best draw. Like it's not the clearest illustrations, I guess, for what's happening.
Yes, you're
like it's hard to tell. That's like
that's the side of the mask. Yeah,
like the half of the mask there.
Yeah, kind
of doesn't help, and then I guess he's going for like the half and half sort of thing, but one's the back of the head, right? I keep pointing.
Yes.
Like, one is the back of the head, but then you get the back of the head and the third panel there. So I don't know. It's just not maybe the best choices for that. Like you could probably just have that middle panel almost, or just like one panel that shows
the things coming out.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of the cutting away to the back and then keeping it on the back, like if he had done a full front here with the things coming out like that, we would have that, and then you'd cut to the back to show that they're actually stabbing into the head, and then we get a full indication that they're all going into the head. Now, part of the reason why I bring this up and wanted to ask about what you were interpreting and stuff is that you can see in this colored version the color of the hair, right? It's that classic comic book where it's black with blue to indicate black hair, right?
Yep.
But when we get to this panel where come on, we got to figure out how to handle this.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So in this this panel right here, the back of the head where it's showing in, I don't know how well you can see that, but the hair. So he's wearing this jaguar like cloak, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the hair is also yellow in this panel, right? So that's just a weird choice because it makes it seem like he's a blonde character, right? Like it doesn't feel like stylization at this point. Like, he's like all cast in yellow because this, I don't know. It was just like a couple small color choices, but those color choices matter, right? Like, why is his hair yellow here when it's not? Because it gives you because since he's wearing Jaguar stuff, because it's this like past, we got a human sacrifice and stuff. Like he's not wearing normal clothes. I get the sense that this is not modern times. Was that your interpretation?
Yes. Well, and also like, going back to the coloring, did he do the coloring?
I only assume he did. I don't know.
Like, it's probably an obsidian knife, right?
Probably. That's my interpretation.
So coloring it blue is kind of weird. I mean,
hair is maybe sorry. So in this version right here, he's got the knife held up. It's not. It's a stone knife.
Silver. Or
stone. Presumably, it's stone. Is my guess based on the texture. And it has some sort of blue black. Oh, I think that's shadow. Okay, so. Because so can you see in his mask there's a blue shadow to the side of the mask?
Yeah, kind of.
There's a blueness to this knife too, and that's probably interpreted as shadow on the stone.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, it's a little rough here at the start, but
yes. Now my only point about bringing up that color choice on the hair though is that by even making those choices, even though we saw like we're learning a lot of things. This is brand new to us as readers, right? We're trying to absorb things. And the consistency of storytelling is what's going to help us to really feel grounded in this universe. And so this sudden choice to have his yellow hair tells you something that he's not meaning to tell you, right? Because if this is, if this is an older time where human sacrifice is present, he's got this jaguar thing on. It's sort of setting a world of okay, we're looking probably at a jungle life, and were the guys who were there, did they have blonde hair? Right? No, because he actually has black hair, but in this one panel it's blonde. And so the blonde for just a second is like, okay, oh, am I misinterpreting? Was it actually blonde the whole time? And like, you need to make sure, no, it's black, it's black. It's just things like that. Little things
For
like
sure. That. Yeah. It has the black clarity a little bit. I was wondering if maybe it's like he was going for like sort of a reflected light off the jaguar
cloak, possibly. Or just in a way to even, he might have done it to just pop the mask elements going into the head, right? Because if it was black on blue, and then with the blue of the rendering, that's probably why he did yellow, to just pop the mask, to not have it blend. But that color choice is telling this brain he has blonde hair. Okay, so just another small little translation thing. So in this one, we have whoa, amazing, absolutely amazing. But in the official version, where it says amazing right here, it's how, ... And then in this one, how delightfully bizarre is how that's translated. And then the man is still alive, even after being impaled by the mask's claw-like bones into the brain. All right, now, I'm curious, when you were reading this, what did you interpret? Like, is this caption? Is this...
Oh, him? Yeah, like, I wasn't sure. I'm still not sure.
Yeah, it's funny. Okay, so the color does help a little bit here, I think, in helping to determine that these are captions rather than dialogue. So you can see in that first one where it's white, right? Like right there, meaning that's his actual dialogue. But then the gray helps to say those are different. Those are not his dialogue coming from him. And of course, you can, the way that it's speaking, we can interpret that it's narration rather than actually a character speaking. However, I wanted to point it's small things that I think do matter. So in the unofficial version, we have the mask's claw-like bones into the brain. It's very specific. Whereas in the official, it says the bones pierced through his skull. There's no mention of the brain. Now, both of them you can interpret that if they're going into the brain, but since it says skull, it's painting a picture inside your mind of the depth. At least I'm going to speak for myself. It's painting a picture of where these claws are going. So if it says it's piercing the skull, it means it's going into the bone and potentially reaching the brain. But this one's saying it's going into the brain. And when it's explicit like that, it's letting me think, okay, this is actually going so far that it's hitting his brain. This might be changing who he is as a person, not just embedding itself into the bone.
Yeah. It's a slight distinction, but an important one potentially.
I think so. And once again, maybe the skull is accurate to what Araki actually wrote. Right? He never said the brain, and it's this one who's interpreting it. I don't know. That's the problem. We don't know which one is actually accurate, but I would love to learn someday. So for all the people who aren't watching, and can speak Japanese or read Japanese or something, they can tell us.
Yes, let us know.
All right. So I finally obtained Eternal Life. Now, this is the panel I was thinking of where we reveal not great drawing. Like, yes, we're seeing, some wonkiness, like this hand is not wonderful. That hand's not wonderful. This hand is really not wonderful. But this, these giant legs and what feels like little arms, like this, like his head is so tiny, like to the size of what would be his butt. That to me is when you mentioned not great, about maybe that he's not as, I don't know exactly the words. I'm trying not to put words in your mouth about how you described the art. So you tell me.
Oh, I mean, I just said somewhat amateurish,
Yes,
like,
there you go.
Or like an underground like comic or something,
Oh, whoops.
Which is similar.
Turns out we do have people talking to us, and I totally missed it. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so What's that?
This is all your fault. I can't see anything. So
Yeah, I guess so. So we do have um we do have Victoria Joestar. Holy cow, somebody from the Joestar family had asked will you be discussing only Phantom Blood? And the answer is yes. And then Creepshow 314 to try in an effort probably to try to help Victoria repeated the question.
Creepshow 314. I don't know about that guy.
Yes. So the answer is yes. We're only discussing chapter 1 of Phantom Blood. That is it. We are just 100% trying to see the beginnings of this story. I do believe that Victoria lost patience with us and already left. Okay, so all right,
we'll do better.
Yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I'll have to look over there to actually see it. Wait a second, a private chat. Who the heck is private chatting us?
That was probably me.
Oh, actually, it was you. Okay.
Well, hey, we'll work this out. You should send me the link to the stream because then I can keep an eye on the questions as well.
Okay.
This is the beta version.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we'll figure that out next time, actually, because that would take me. I mean, maybe I could share this link or whatever. You could go to my YouTube, and it should probably just be there. But either way, so you want to do that? Go ahead. Okay, so I don't. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say I don't want to harp too hard, but I am so interested in the different choices in the translation and how they affect characterization and like interpretation of the scene, the tone and stuff. So we have him, he says, I finally attained eternal life. That's pretty close to the official one. So then we reveal for the first time, because this whole time we've only had two characters, right? The man and the woman. And we reveal that he's actually surrounded by presumably his tribe or his clan or whatever, right? So we got a lot more people out there and an interpretation of the altar that we're on. And then boom, do you wish to become my life force? And he says, yes, my lord. I really prefer this one because the actual official one is he says, will you become my life energy? And there's a difference here. They're both questions, but to me, what's different here is when he says in the unofficial one, he says, do you wish to become my life force? He's saying, do you have, like, he's asking what is happening inside of you. Like, he's not asking
himself.
Exactly. Whereas this one, the official one says, will you become? Now he's asking it. To me, there's a power dynamic here, right? So if this dude is a leader who just slaughtered this girl and absorbed her and he's become, he says, I've attained eternal life. To me, I'm getting the sense that, okay, we're seeing a picture here where he's got all these followers around him. He is a position of power. And so when he says, do you wish to become my life energy? He's asking, what is in your heart? What is in your mind? But when he says, will you become, it makes him weaker, in my opinion, because he's saying, please, will you do this? That it just weakens it a little bit to say, when you say, will you become, it's, I want you to become my life force. Whereas the other one is, do you want to become my life force? It's a small thing, but actually changes the power dynamic, in my opinion.
For sure. Also, it's a little bit, I mean, what do you think? Like he's saying he's attained eternal life. And then right after that, then he's asking this guy to be his life force.
Yes. What is the interpretation there? Right. Like, I guess my interpretation, and it's hard to say because I have read this. I've read all of the Phantom Blood arc. So I'm, I know more than you. But I guess I make a leap to say that even though he has eternal life, he can continue to absorb life to get stronger. Yeah. That's maybe my interpretation of that. And then bam, we get a really exciting, shoves his fingers straight into his throat.
Yeah, that's brutal.
And then starts literally sucking out his life force.
That's like
however that happens.
Mork. You remember Mork would drink with his finger?
In Mork and Mindy?
Yeah.
No, I do not remember that. I watched that when I was a little kid.
314 remembers that.
Does he? We'll see. Okay, now I want to point out one weird thing. It's just interesting to me. It's just such a strange choice. So okay, because it's black and white, right? So he shoves his fingers into his throat, and then we can presume like this is like veins. This might be his literal veins, or like these new sort of elements that are being created to suck out the energy of. Okay, Creepshow indicates that he probably does no more than Mindy, but in the colored version, can you see that? It's all green. Like the veins and all that sort of stuff are green, which is just an interesting choice, because when I see the black and white art, I interpret.
I don't trust these colors.
I do believe they're probably Araki, given that that's usually what happens in manga, is that the artist actually does the special color pages. So they're probably his own work. It's just an interesting, strange choice, because it makes it feel apart from the actual body. Whereas when we're looking at the black and white art, I believe that he's like literally, like, even though we can't see those fingertips, that, you know, we don't know if they've transformed at all, but or if it's just like I really feel like that's that guy's body basically starting to shrink wrap itself, right? Like all the nutrients and stuff are getting sucked out of him. But by painting it green, it's telling us that this is apart from his body. Like, maybe is this something that the leader has created that is going through, you know, it
almost seems like it's going into him.
Yes, it's a different approach to the storytelling, and one that I don't particularly love. Okay, so then he proves his strength by literally smashing his body into the stone, and we cut out to show that it splits out. Now, this was interesting to me, because by cutting this far out to show that action, it actually robs it of its full power. Like, to me, it's quieter, right? Like, yes, he broke the stab, but it's like so far out that it's not really that big of like, it doesn't have the full impact like this one, because we're up close. When he slams it, you can feel the momentum. But by cutting way out there, it's just like, you know, like you could imagine the sound, you know, the sound's kind of far off. We're just not feeling it. And that's okay, because he's decided to use the page real estate on this moment to maximize how big of a deal this is. And we get the story that he split the rock, but that's not as big of a deal as him, like, you know, draining the life out of this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he goes very wide in that little panel there, but then we also, the right below, we get the kind of a similar thing, right?
Yes. And so the way it's confirmation in a lot of ways, because it's so wide, yes, we know presumably that that's being split, but this is like confirmation that yes, he did break the rock. You know, that's how strong he was. That's kind of how I interpreted that. But now here's something. Go ahead.
That was a little unclear to me.
Exactly. That's why I think he did this follow-up shot to say that's, yes, what you thought was happening, if that's, you know, it confirmed. But where did the guy's body go, and where did the impact?
He's in the ground, I guess.
So there's just, you know, small little touches like that I do think matter. You know, you want to have consistency in your storytelling. You want to have you want to keep up these little moments. Okay, so now we finally get some answers of where we're at, right? We're in BC 12 to 16th century, or we're around that time anyway, for this thing. So was, you know, like, is that kind of how you're interpreting it, and like it confirmed that this, like, okay, yeah, we're in the past, all that sort of stuff? Is this working for you?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get this some information here that this is where the Aztecs were. At the same time, another tribe, this tribe, was blessed with the demonic mask to try and dominate the earth. Was that clear to you, that when it was first talking, like when it said the Sun People Aztecs, that this was not the Aztecs?
I mean, from reading it, yeah, but I mean, you know, you don't know who it is, so
there's a little bit of a difference here in the official translation and the official. So this one says, also known as the Sun People Aztecs. At the same time, another tribe blessed with the demonic mask dominates the earth. And so it takes 2 panels, well, it takes 3 panels actually, for us to get the clarification that this is not the Aztecs that they were talking about. That was just setting to give you a concept of like, yes, here's the Aztecs, you know about them, and in addition to that, here's this tribe, right? This demonic tribe. Whereas in the official translation, the way they say is they were called the Aztecs, the people of the sun, and among them existed a tribe that attempted to take over the world. So in the official one, it's saying among the Aztecs was this tribe. Whereas this one, it says at the same time, another tribe, which may or not be the Aztecs at all to some degree, right? Like, yes, we have this temple and we have probably iconography that indicates Aztecs, but they may not have been. It just leaves a little bit of room for interpretation of saying, here's why you don't know about this tribe. It's because the Aztecs were what everybody knows. And at the same time, here was this other one, a smaller one, something off to the side, darker, in the shadows, which is why they're not contained in our history. Just a small change. It's little detail like that gives me, at least me, a different interpretation. All right, and it says they somehow disappeared. And this story depicts the mysterious stone mask from Mexico and its raveling of destinies of two youngsters and their bizarre adventure. So all of this is just a lead up into the actual story to teach us about the mask. Mm-hmm. How did this work for you?
Yeah, it worked.
I agree. It worked for me too, because we got some exciting stuff, right? We know that this dude meant business. He did kill that lady. He killed this dude. He says eternal life. It's this weird mask that comes to life when blood gets on it and goes into people's brains. This is all pretty exciting stuff. All right, so then we cut to what?
Oh, I think this is where I was a little bit unsure. Well, this is the guy who's telling the story, right? About how he he's dying and he's telling, this is his son? He's telling him to go find this guy that he'll take care of him.
Yes. So this is the scene where we get introduced to a character named Dio. So, and we're also jumping time, which is, presumably apparent because we were in a time where it looked older, and now we're in a house and windows and things like that.
Yeah, this is like the 1800s or something, right?
That's what I would guess, just based purely on this single drawing, right? Like, just that it's got an old kind of European sort of feel to it. Mm-hmm. But if we lived in Europe and this is what our house looked like, we might think it's modern times. I guess I have never been to Europe, so we have to ask Kyle Haas what he what his experience was.
Definitely. I mean, that's an old like wood stove.
Yeah, right there. Yes, but I mean that. Okay. Either way, let me do my little translation thing here again. The differences. So in this unofficial version, we have Dio. Did you even hear what I said? Whereas in the official one, in that exact same balloon, he says, "Can you hear me, Dio?" And that once again is just a difference enough to indicate character personality. So in this unofficial one, he says, "Did you even hear what I said?" That's a little aggressive. Mm-hmm. Right, it sounds like somebody who's maybe not a little impatient, right? Like he says, "Did you even hear what I said?"
Yeah. Whereas in this one, are you paying attention?
Exactly. In this one, he says, "Can you hear me?" That's more exploratory, right? It's more like, I'm talking, but I'll keep talking if you can hear me, but if you can't, I need to actually get your attention, right? And so that little bit of change actually indicates the personality of the person who's speaking. In this one, we have somebody who's demanding. In this one, we have somebody who is a little weaker. At least
he's sick, obviously, so he could very well be saying, like, do you hear me? Am I speaking loudly?
Right. So this could be the official, but that's the point, is that what the character Creepshow says, wood stoves are cool, and he's not wrong. I've got one behind me, not in this boiler room, but in the actual room. So the indication, like, right. Yes, what you just said. This could be the actual official translation that Araki intended. He intended to say, "Can you hear me? Do I need to speak louder? Do I need to get your attention?" But I like this unofficial one version better because I get the sense that this dude is impatient. Yes, he's sick. We get that clarified in the next panel where he's coughing. And so I get, I can get the idea that he's more demanding, right? I can't get out of this bed. I'm trying to get your attention. Why aren't you? Yes, there's an urgency there. Exactly. So you won't be able to see this, unfortunately, probably very clearly. But in this panel right here, so the second panel, so in this one where he says, "Dio, cough, cough." And can you see this very clear in this one?
No.
Okay. But can you see how the balloons or the words are all stacked up and it's all even? So this is the official, right? And it's all stacked up and even. Now, most of those are coughs. And it's very, very robotic. It's very cough, 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 cough. Right? Whereas in the unofficial one, we actually have smaller text. It's offset a little bit, which gives it a life to it, right? So when he's like, "Dio," you can believe that that's a sound. Whereas this, it's just like, wah, 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 wah. Like, and that's how all the coughs are. So there's actually a lot more life being put into even just the presentation of text in this unofficial version.
For sure. It also shows you, like, man, you can do a lot with lettering.
Exactly.
With how you handle that stuff, sound effects, all that, and how you can, you know, how it affects the storytelling.
Exactly. To bring life or rob life, because that, to me, this version is robbing the life out of it. Okay, so finally we get a shot here of the beginning of Dio. It's a back shot, and we see that he's reading a book. So just out of when you were reading this for the first time, you got to this panel, and he closes his book. What was your interpretation of this character at this moment, this personality? What is the story telling you?
Oh, I mean, I guess that he's not that interested. He's kind of doing something else while he's, just maybe just watching over this guy.
Yeah, and I ask that especially because I know who Dio is as a character now, right? I know where this is going because I've read all of Phantom Blood. So I just want to, try to tap back in to Rob Life. Eld is Creepshow's doing some sort of play on words here with us. Oh, Rob Life, because I'm robbing the life out of the sound effects. I got it. Okay. All right. So then he gets here and what is it, old man? You need medicine? And we got, an indication of, I think you're interpreting the character right. Right. He's doing something else. He's not as concerned. Exactly. And so even here, yes, he's acknowledging him, but it's not that warm. Right. So I want to once again harp on the translation. So in the official version, he says, "Yes, Father, your medicine." Once again, that changes tone, at least to me, right? So when he says, "What is it, old man? You need medicine?" Where he says, "Yes, Father," that is more respectful.
Yeah.
Where, "What is it, old man?" That's a little bit more disrespectful. That's in line to me with the face that I'm seeing, with the actions that I'm seeing. Right now, once again, this could be the official translation, but I like the unofficial better.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to point out, like in the old man's response, he says, no medicine, Dio. I need to speak to you. Whereas in the official one, he says, no, I don't need any medicine. Dio, can you come over here? There's something I want to talk to you about. More words, and also robbing him of a little bit of power. Because anytime a character has to say, can you come over here? Will you do this for me? Like, now that person is weak, but he says, I need to speak to you. It's a demand. It's not a question. I need to speak to you, right?
Yeah.
To me, that better captures the whole, or at least I like the sense of the the urgency that I'm getting out of this unofficial version, right? Like, I've been trying to get you to come over here and talk to me.
Right. Well, it indicates that he has something important to tell him. And it's,
yes. Exactly. When he says, can you come over here to talk to me? It sounds like, if you get the chance.
Once you finish your book.
Yes. So now we get storytelling wise, we get this. We're presented with an old sick man, and then the revelation that, okay, it's his dad. Right. And then we move into it. He says, I don't have much time left. I'm dying. Silence. Lots of dots. And then we go into this backstory, right? Like he says, I want you to, when I die, take this letter. This dude's going to help you. And then we go into a flashback. And now this is, I think, in my opinion, when I was reading this again, I was like, okay, this is perfect, right? Because so many stories, they start with, like they would start in the flashback. Or like, okay, let me come at this a different way. So you could start this scene in his flashback and then reveal, like, okay, 12 years later or something, right? And I don't like that kind of time jumping, but because we're going into his mind, we're actually going into a memory. I really liked that this is how, so we set up the characters, we set up the scenario, and he says, here, this letter, and then we get clarification of what this letter means, right? So I just dug the movement into the flashback because I was now hungry for this information, right? He says, here's this letter, go to this Joestar guy, he owes me. Okay, I'm interested. How does he owe you? Why does he owe you?
Right.
And it gives me this information. All right, now here's me picking on the translation again. So in this version, we're now 12 years ago on a rainy day. Caption: the cliff collapsed due to the rain, bringing down a carriage into the valley. In the official one, it says the cliffs tend to crumble on rainy days and carriages often slip there. This is very different. You're responding. You tell me what just happened there.
Well, that's more just like it's just giving you the facts, like it's a like show about what happens when things rain in this area.
And it also, to me, robs the importance of this moment. So this one is saying the cliff collapsed due to rain, bringing down, as if this never has happened. This is a one-time scenario that caused this important moment. But in the official version, it says, don't worry, this happens all the time. Right. This is a normal thing. It robs it of saying this moment is special by saying this is just one of many moments. That to me is, and once again, this might be how Araki wrote it, but this is a better story. Okay, we get the revelation of I love this face.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And we now get to go ahead.
Where the drawing benefits him a little bit, right? Because that's, I mean, I don't know if you would draw a face like that now. You know his work better than me, but that's great.
Yes, because of his.
Even though it's like kind of bad.
Exactly, but that's when you're leaning into your personal style, and your style is often created due by your own limitations or your misinterpretations of life, right? That you start saying this is only my version of this thing, and that becomes appealing because that's why people come to you, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, only Araki does this, and I love looking at when he does that kind of weird stuff or whatever. But I also dig that we get an indication of this dude's actual personality, right? He's quite a ghoul is quickly revealed to us.
Oh yeah.
And this sorry, go ahead.
He's a bad guy.
Yes, we quickly find out he's a bad guy. That it takes a couple seconds, right? He is kind of cruel to this lady. He says, "Idiot, it's a rich man's carriage." Comes down, boom, we got a dead guy with some gruesome wound here. And I was admiring the gore when I was looking at this, like that kind of nice stretched out skin. Like it really is effective at being horrifying. You're like, I don't know exactly how that would, what would happen to the face, but I believe that could happen to a face with that kind of damage to it, Okay, now this is one of the areas where I think the unofficial translation is actually weaker than the official one. So he says, "Whoa, this guy is dead." Now, even though visually we can see that this one doesn't have the spokes in him, given the way that it reads, it's almost like you tell me if you interpret it this way. It almost reads like he's talking about, like he's making he's commenting on this guy. So if we see dead, he says, "Whoa, this guy is dead," but he's actually talking about this body.
Yeah.
Like, did you interpret that as two different bodies?
I did it on the first sort of like go around and to look back and realize it was somebody else.
Yes. So now the official version clarifies.
This is the guy in the foreground here in the left hand.
Yes,
panel?
and that to me, I'm glad you pointed that out because I actually didn't even see that. In the multiple times I've read this story, I have never observed that was a guy. My brain just immediately said those were like rocks or debris or something like that.
Yeah, it's not, again, just going back to the art, it's not super clear,
Yeah. Okay, so the official version helps the story at this point because his dialogue says that one over there's a goner too, helping to clarify, okay, he's now pointing and talking about a different body. So in that case, official version 1, unofficial version 10. And then also this lady's dialogue is, but they immediately lose it in my opinion. So they win this balloon, but they lose it in this balloon. So his female partner, she runs off and says, "Hey, the lady in the carriage is dead, but her child is still alive." And this sound effect is not translated, but that's actually baby crying. So it's going wah, wah in the official version. Now, that is telling us her observation, right? So we're seeing that she's rushing forward and she is saying out loud what she's observing, correct? Right? Is this your interpretation? Like that's how you see the visual storytelling along with dialogue. Now, in the official version, she says, "There's a dead woman inside the carriage, but she's holding a baby that's still alive. She must have been protecting him." That's a lot more information, and it's a lot more explicit that kind of robs, like those two, like her running forward at the carriage does not work with me to how much she's saying that she's seeing in the carriage. That's just a personal opinion, maybe, but I like this one better.
It's hard to say because you can't really see what she's seeing. I mean,
right.
You kind of have to just assume, like, oh, okay, I guess she sees the ladies. She sees what she's saying, you know?
Yes, and that's why I believe this version better than this version, the official. I believe the unofficial better than because she says just a couple things, only the like clear information we need. But in the official one, she goes even so far to speculate on what her last actions were. She must have been protecting him. Like, I don't need that. I just need to know.
Not necessary.
And then he says, "Child, forget the child." Whereas in the official one, he says, "Some brat's in there. Who cares?" It's just a slight. It's the same thing done differently, but one of them I do think is, consistently better than the other. I just like and I started thinking about it as I was noticing the differences. I think I like as a maybe storyteller dialogue, I like accuracy perhaps rather than color. Because, in this one he says, "Child, forget the child." That's just like, it's like pinpoint, right? Whereas in this one he says, "Some brat's in there. Who cares?" That's a little more colorful. It's a little more off the mark in a way.
I kind of like that.
There we go. So there's a difference between.
Well, I mean, I think it just sounds more like how he might talk, right?
Yes, this is not real, right? This child, forget the child. That's not how a real person should talk. This one is real, but it's a little more. It's not as pinpoint on exactly what he's trying to convey. Okay, so this is where we actually finally get our revelation of his character, right? So first of all, he's just been going down and seeing the damage, but we finally see him steal a ring off of a dead man's finger. And that tells us, he's a scoundrel, or somebody who's not to be respected or whatever. So right here, I'm going to point out another thing. Right here, he says, "A rich man's woe is a poor man's blessing." Whereas in the official one, he says, "One man's misfortune is another man's gain." Now, what I like about the unofficial one is that he's describing his status explicitly. He is saying, "I am a poor man, taking from a rich man." Whereas in this one man's that puts them equal in some ways, right? I'm a man, he's a man, but he had a misfortune and I gained from it. I like the unofficial one better because he's saying, "I know I'm a poor man, and I am purposely taking from rich people who have suffered this."
Right. Does it have the laughter in the official one?
It does, but once again, this laughter, we get a little bit of color to it, right? It's offset, it's slanted, it's spaced out a little bit. You can believe that it's not just words. Whereas in the official version, you're not going to be able to see it very clearly, but it's very robotic once again. It's just pasted in like any other, just like, so we're missing that nice little color to it.
Yeah, you probably could have done even more than they did with the laughter there,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I at least they're doing something. But okay, actually, let's expand on that, please. If you were going to do more, what would you do?
Well, I mean, it's just repeated. I mean, it is. You get the tilt and stuff, but it's repeated. The font is basically the same size. Like, I imagine he's very excited about.
There's a lot more energy to it. So you're saying maybe make this one a little smaller, this one a little bigger, offset it even a little more, so it's like a little more,
more variety.
I like it. I like it.
You could change the font up. Do something a little more like.
Yeah. So it's just it's got a little bit. Yeah. I love it. Good idea. Okay, then he opens up the briefcase and kaboom! We have a connection to our intro scene immediately, right? We've established that the stone mask has traveled through time and is now in presumably Europe, of some portion of Europe, or this could be America. What do you think? Europe, America?
I would think Europe, but only because I know that in a lot of manga they tend to have stories set in Europe.
And I guess we're going to find out. Maybe it'll confirm. I can't remember if it confirms whether or not where this is specific. Okay, so then he talks about this even more gruesome activity. Help me open his mouth. I'll sell his teeth to the
Yeah.
And this, actually catches her off guard a little bit. Is at least actually what do you interpret with this panel? She says the word "you."
I didn't interpret much from that. It's a weird response from her, unless she's saying like you dirtbag or something. Like, I can't believe how disgusting you are.
Yes. So now this might be so this is where the translation, I think, in the official version does a little bit better to try and tell us what the intention of this panel is supposed to be. So she says, honey. She's got that, that classic comic book where it's H dash and then honey. So it's like that pause, like whatever, however you're supposed to interpret that in real life. Like, honey, apprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
Dot, which I interpret to mean, and like, I interpret that to mean that she is taken aback, exactly what you just said, right? Whereas maybe this is exactly what she would say in Japan, and they would know that, but it's not helping us Americans to fully understand what her intentions are in this moment. But I believe that is the point. She's taken back by just how reprehensible. What's wrong? We'll take his teeth and sell it to the dentist, or sell it to nobles. And then bam, a hand grabs a hand.
Mm-hmm.
Did you immediately understand that this was, what did you did you know what was being told here?
Yeah, I think I read it as this guy not being dead.
Yes. Okay. Now here's a couple questions. Why do we think that is? How can we tell? We don't know whose hand is hand, but how do we know whose hands are each hand?
Well, just from his sleeve, I guess, and he's also proximity,
And I would argue we know by the staging of these other. What's that?
It's not the woman, so.
Yes, that because they both look like manly hands. But we also know, because he's established where the characters are in proximity, this guy is above this guy.
Yeah.
And so we know that he's coming from this direction. So by having the arm coming from down, and like, we know this must be this man's hand, whereas this one is coming up from the bottom, and we know he's from the bottom. So without even, I'm just saying, like, it's a great choice to say, here's, you're subconsciously understanding what we're seeing here. And then this panel immediately helps to, because this arm would go straight up to this face, he's immediately helping you to, and preceded by the same angle. So we know where he is in location to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then bam, reveal, he isn't dead. And he's shocked, he's still alive. And then unfortunately, he asks about his family.
He doesn't look very alive, though. I mean, he kind of does in that like central panel, the little one, where his eyes
right here.
Kind of, yeah, where the little one.
This one, where he says
where his eyes are looking a particular direction, but then the next couple of panels, he's back to being dead looking.
But that, I think, is good, right? It shows on how wounded he is, where he's at. You get a lot of idea about how weak this man's life force is at the moment. You can interpret how he's probably speaking, right? Like a weakness to the voice, all that sort of stuff being conveyed nicely through the art, right? Mm-hmm. I would argue. And then, of course, he gets the bad news that his wife is dead, but the child is fine. And we get this nice emotional shot. One moment, where we see him affected by the news. Now, here's one of the places, again, where the official translation is actually superior to this one. So he says, my wife and child, are they all right? Says, all are dead, but your child is fine. And then he's got a thought balloon here. Guess he thinks that I saved his child. That's not good. So in the official version, he says he thinks I was trying to save his life. So he's just stating what, his interpretation. Much better. In the official version, the old man is saying, okay, this rich dude thinks I was trying to save his life. That's good, because that's what I think he actually is interpreting. Mm-hmm. He has no reason to think that this guy saved his child's life. So that's bad. Bad. Okay, and then one last little thing here that I want to point out in terms of dialogue and regarding this page. So he says, luckily my child survived. He reaches into his pocket and he says, I'd like to thank you, but I seem to have been robbed of my wallet and ring.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Okay, so now in the official version, though, he adds there's a little bit of additional dialogue there that I think changes what's going on inside this man's mind. So he says, I was going to repay you, but it seems that someone came along and snatched my wallet and rings before you got here.
Implying that he sort of knows that it was him.
It maybe, right? Or he's saying he's not thinking him at all, and he is actually saying there was another person that came here. By adding that before you got here changes the whole, and just changes it. Changes what we might be thinking that this guy thinks, right? Because in the unofficial version, when he says, but I seem to be robbed off my wallet and ring, now he might be implying that it could be him.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I
he's not saying
going, so I wasn't sure,
Exactly. That little addition of before you got here, I don't care for it. I don't care for it. I like this better where he's not saying explicitly when it happened. It might have been you, and I'm being kind enough not to call you out because because I want you to do something for me, which is, continue to help me survive and my child to survive on this. But in this other one, he says, before you got here, that could be interpreted as that this guy is that naive. It might be hammering the point home of saying, no, this guy really does believe that somebody took his ring and wallet before this guy.
Yeah.
That's
he almost died too, right? So he's not thinking clearly, probably.
Right. And that's fine, to some degree, because I think that, that's how I interpreted some of this, all of this, is that we know that he's not in his right state of mind when he is offering all of this to him, I want to reward you. But he's also presumably just a good man. All right, so then we jump back in time, or back to a present time. And we get the old man's wish, right? The explanation of what he wants. I want you to go and become rich. Oh, but I did like this in this quick little wrap up here. So he says, I'm going to reward you, and then we get a quick little glimpse of just how things badly went because he's not a good man, right? So it says, I used the money to start a hotel, but that business failed, and on top of that, my wife died. So we know that even though he was rewarded for something he didn't truly do, even with that money, he couldn't actually turn around his life because presumably he's just not a good man, and that plays out regardless.
Right.
And then boom, we jump time. He's at a cemetery. We can assume that his dad died, right? You took this.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Confirmation, he is dead. Now, how did you respond to all this scene? So just to be clear, if that's a little hard for you to. So we're getting into the mind of Dio a little bit here, right? So he's been aloof to his father at the very least. But now we get into a little bit of we understand why he was acting that way, right? He said, you made mother suffer. So now we know he actually had this resentment towards his dad because of the way he saw his mom. And he says, want to be rich? I'll show you. And he's going to, this is not written well. Your inheritance, I accept. I'll take exploit every situation. So we have a typo there. Mm-hmm. I'll exploit every situation I can to be the world's wealthy and powerful man. And this is a little clearer, and that's I think the point of the official translation is it's often clarifying, going a little harder to clarify exactly what's happening. And so in the official one, it says, I could make it on my own, but I'll use anyone and everyone that I can. I'll milk the Joestar nobles for everything they're worth and never lose to anyone. So it's really, really hard stating what his intentions are to go forward.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's defining his character moving forward, right?
And I like that. I dig that I dig this character that we're learning about him, right? I like that even though he hated his dad, he's like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that anyway. I'm not going to do it because you told me to, but because that's what I want to do anyway. And I'll be a super bad guy potentially doing it. And then boom, he spits on his dad's grave and off he goes. And then we get a more, 19th century, we get a little bit more clarification. But I don't think it tells us if this is Europe or America yet. We now know that everybody's trying to become rich. Boom. We cut scenes once again. And now I'm just going to point out one of the things that I dig about Hirohiko his scene changes here is that one of the classic approaches in manga is you often do a scene change at the beginning of a new page, and you do a little cutaway of like many times it's a cutaway of like a location or, you know, like a building or, you know, like some scenery to help the person say that we're moving from one place to another, and maybe even one moment in time to another. But one of the things that I like is that there doesn't have to be rules to comic books and manga, right? So he does a scene change at the end of a page by cutting from here to here, right? There's no clarification that we're actually moving from another scene entirely. We just get suddenly a doll being held up, and then boom, we move out and we know, okay, we've moved to another place in time. Mm-hmm. And he does this throughout the story, right? He's never actually, like right here, boom, we cut through time. He's in the house with his dad. Boom, we're in a cemetery.
Yeah.
Bottom of the page. But we know.
Yeah, you know. Well, you know, also he's, you know, like he's on a deathbed and then you cut to a cemetery. So it's like.
Exactly. But this one's a real change, right? Because we're going from this sort of more narrative kind of just exposition setting, and then wham, make sense of this. Okay, here you go. Here's this, like, you know, here's a piece of information, and here's clarification of the information setting, right? Okay, so we got this poor girl getting picked on by these two dudes, and then bam, at the bottom of this page, we get this dude popping up over this wall. Stop it! They look over, give the doll back to her. We have an introduction of what we can presume is the hero. Is that what your take here was?
Yeah. Yep.
And then we get here, are you and Serena's friend? Now, this is strange. Did you get hung up here? Do you remember this? This panel.
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
Because his first dialogue is no, but I won't let you bully her, right? So we go, are you Arena's friend? And even though we scroll down, the thing we should do is go up here and then scroll down again. But they put his no here, and then, but I won't let you bully her. So it really should be here, but I won't let you bully her.
Right.
So that placement of that dialogue. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you'd have to compose that differently.
Exactly. You need to flip them around. Now, here's what's interesting, though, is that in the official version, where that no is, seems they put AH exclamation point, and that seems to be indicating. Oh, sorry. Well, not that you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, I can.
All right. The point, but so there's a dude down here, one of the bullies down here in the bottom of the panel, right? So in the official version, they have the in there, indicating that dialogue is coming from him and that he's responding to this character rushing forward to him, right? So therein lies an interesting question. What this balloon on the bottom, is this the hero's dialogue balloon, or is this the villain's balloon?
Yeah.
We have two interpretations. The unofficial says it's the hero's, but the official says it's the villain's.
Right. Well, it seemed like if it was the hero's, you could have put it with the rest of his dialogue.
That's a good, and this is one of the interesting things about manga that I often do appreciate, but can lead into problems exactly like this. They're not so concerned about balloon tails, right? So in this one, give the doll back to her. There is no tail indicating that it's coming from him. We know it's coming from him because it's in his panel. Are you Arena's friend? It's not indicating which of these two, but this guy's mouth's open, so we can assume it's him.
Yeah.
This tail is actually pointing to this dude. If we followed its direction, it's going down here, right? We just assume that it's his because it's closer to him and this one's closer to him. But there's actually no real clear indication of whose balloons should belong to each other.
Yeah.
Because there's no tail for this one.
Is it Naoki Urasawa, the Pluto guy? I remember seeing and maybe this is just like a manga thing where you don't usually have characters having a conversation in the same panel. It's usually like this character says something, you have a new
cut
panel, to the response, so that way the tails don't matter.
They're not necessary.
Much. But here you have a couple of pieces of dialogue, so you kind of do need more of an indication. So
just a heads up, can you hear this dog barking?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's my parents' dog, who will bark a lot. So hopefully that won't become too big of a problem. I can try and mute it whenever I'm not talking. Okay, so, but I do want to continue to point out differences in translation here. So right here he says, okay, actually I want to point out a couple things here. So I have a preference, a rule that one of my other rules, I guess, of story. I personally don't want any more nerd main characters ever again. No more nerds as the main character. Like I accept Peter Parker, I accept Shinji Mikami. Not Shinji Mikami. Shinji Ikari from Evangelion. I accept those as basically nerd main characters, but over the last couple of decades, there has been both in manga and in American creations, so many lame main characters. And so when I get to here and I see this dude pop up and I see him trying to, coming out full force as a hero, I dig it. Like, okay, here's a guy who stands up. You're like, the moment he sees something wrong, he's coming right back at you. He's coming at these villains. I want more characters who are full of vigor and like trying to do the right thing. I am so tired of nerds and losers as main characters. So when he runs forward and he tackles him, I love the revelation that he's actually not that good at being a hero, even though he's trying. So it doesn't matter that he's exactly. That's fun. In a world where so many heroes are effortlessly defeating villains, I love the revelation that this guy is not that good at it. So, But anyway, he has this dialogue. The villain has a dialogue. Saving a damsel in distress, eh? I hate guys like him. See how I'm going to whip you. And he gets a blow to the back. What's that move called? You're into MMA, UFC.
It was like a double hammer fist.
That's what I was wondering. Hammer fist. I was curious if that was accurate.
Okay. I would say the fact that he's not very good at fighting is it makes what he's doing more heroic.
Exactly, because he probably knows he's not good. We're learning he's not good, but he probably knows I can't really do good at this, and he's trying anyway. Okay, sure. So in the unofficial, we have that saving a damsel in distress. I hate guys like him. Whereas in the official word, he says, "Bastard, I hate guys who try to look cool in front of girls." It's a same intention, but slightly different.
Well, that could show you a little bit about this bad guy's character, right? Because he interprets it as, oh, you're just trying to look cool in front of this girl.
Yes.
As opposed to like, they both tell you something about this guy. Right?
Exactly. Just a different take on this thing.
Like the white knight types or whatever,
Yes.
He's annoyed he's probably threatened by guys like that.
And then we once again quickly reveal that he's not actually good. So this guy's useless. So he might be threatened, but he finds out like, oh, I don't have to be threatened by this guy after all. I'm just gonna whomp him.
That's a great panel too. Like the way basically everything is coming down on top of this.
Yes, to really get that force. Yes, and then we cut out wide and that up angle, which gives a sense of this main character, this hero's a place of weakness, right? Because like that up angle shooting down at him, going far, helps to emphasize that he's not doing great, right?
Yeah. Well, he's more, you get he's smashed. He's kind of like there by himself.
Yes, we're getting an isolation through that far shot, all that sort of stuff. So this is some great storytelling right here.
And he's tiny. They're on top of him, basically.
Yep.
Like they're
literally staged above him.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff. Once again, we got a nice super exaggeration here of how enthusiastic this guy is. From here to zero, hey, this loser? And now this is clunky in both versions, right? So he says he doesn't look familiar, and maybe he's the only son of the Joestar family. Oh, yeah. And then this one, he says, no clue. He couldn't be Joestar's only son now, could he? Both of those are super clunky. Neither one of those are great. They want to, Araki wants to get across that they know that there's a son of the Joestar family, and this might be him. But both of those are terrible. So, can we quickly come up with a line of dialogue that would sound more natural and get that across?
I think for the hero guy, he could have he could have maybe even like announced that somewhat, like no, you know, no son of Joestar will ever allow someone to be treated this way, or
that's a good point. But we're moving forward. There's an actual Araki has a plan for storytelling that is why he didn't do that, right? So if we jump ahead, there's this moment where the hero, who we don't know his name until this moment, pulls out his handkerchief, and he's got his name on his handkerchief, Jonathan Joestar.
Oh, that's
so
right,
it confirms. So this is why Araki didn't have that character do that, because he wants him to. And even more so, there's a moment later on where the girl Irina picks up his handkerchief, which he forgot, and says, "Why did you take your handkerchief out? If it weren't for that, they wouldn't have beaten you up." So he's making a point of saying that the moment these guys speculate on who he is, he confirms his identity. Now, I'm not saying this is, this may be a little clunky even on Araki's point of trying to get to that area, right? But the reason why he did all this, at least in this unofficial version, he says, it's because I'm going to become a squire. Squires just can't sit and do nothing when a lady needs help. They have the courage to face the odds, even if they're at a disadvantage. So he's trying to live up to some sort of ideal. Now, this is clarified a little bit better in the official translation, where he says, I want to be a true gentleman. And he says, there are times when a gentleman has to be courageous and fight, even when his opponent is bigger than he is, and he knows he's going to lose. So in this version, when he says, I want to be a squire, that's like a title, right? What do you interpret? What does squire mean to you?
Squire is like an apprentice to a knight, right?
Exactly. And so that seems to indicate that he has like this trajectory of like a career and this like play, like he's going to go and work for a knight. So I don't like the word squire. Now, maybe this is accurate. Maybe if we learned more about squire at this time, all of it. But when he says, I'm going to be a true gentleman, that's not like a vocation, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't indicate, that means an ideal of, I believe this is who I want to be. And whatever job I have, I can still be a true gentleman or stuff.
Yeah.
So I liked the gentleman a lot better than squire.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't have squires at this time, right?
I don't think so, but, we'd have to do a little research. Okay, so jumping back a little bit, we can't have Joestar say who he is, but so we need to bridge this gap between when this guy says, hey, who is this guy? And he says, he speculates, it might be Joestar's son. And then he says, I hate rich smugs. If he's from the Joestars, I swear I'll punch his teeth out. And now we can interpret, like, who's pointing? Whose hand is this?
I would say the bad guy.
Yeah, I would assume as well, right? Because it's probably this main dude here. And whose house is this? Why is he pointing at this house? What do you interpret there?
That's the Joestar mansion.
Yes, that's what I also interpret, right? But it is sort of a little bit of a leap, right? Or it's sort of a leap, and it's also kind of clunky. Because it's like, if he's from the Joestars, that building right over there, like one of the things that I really started to hate in myself when I was storyboarding animation, like when we were working on Marvel's animation, I really started to hate having characters point at whatever they're trying to indicate at stuff. Now, in this case, it's sort of fine, it's sort of fine that he's telling his friend, if he's from that mansion right there, I'm going to knock his teeth out.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it a different way. I remember that being pointed out, like working in animation, like the pointing thing. And like, it's amazing how often I still see it, And
yes,
totally,
it's because it's the go-to answer.
It's necessary almost.
It's not necessary for people to point. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah. You don't usually need it. It's usually just somebody saying something to someone, and like this.
Yes, it's just. I interpret it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. For some reason, I guess it's like that's like your initial thinking.
Yes, it's
like
the first answer. It's the go-to
for emphasis, like they point or whatever. But you don't need to do that, and it stands out in a bad way. Like when you see it.
And because I did it myself, and I did it a lot, I know exactly what I think I felt at those times, which is you don't really have an idea of how to act, but you have this impulse to say, I need the character to do something, but the character doesn't actually often need to do anything.
You don't need to do that, Ben.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, so here's my recommendation of how to fix this panel in a way that I would have loved to see. So what Araki wants to do is he wants to establish the Joestar estate, and he wants to give us its relation to our characters. Cut this pointing hand, draw them at that, just draw them. Show just that they're near the Joestar estate. Yeah, just give us the relationship between where they're at, and the character doesn't have to point at it at all. That's my fix for that. And my suggestion for this is, he says, you know this loser? And he says, I don't know. Maybe he's the Joestar kid. That's how it, like, just a simple thing rather than this, like, maybe he's the only son of the Joestar family. Like, well, I don't need to know that. Go ahead.
That makes a lot more sense if you know that they're that close to, like, where the Joestar
house
is, right?
Exactly.
Like, okay, yeah. I could see you putting the two things together, maybe, especially if that guy's, like, dressed nicely.
Yes, he seems to, these guys have like what seems like a little more like normal clothes, and he immediately, even though we can't ever really, like in this case,
he's like in a suit, right?
Yeah, we interpret that as being a little bit more dressed nicely, just from that single image.
Yeah, their outfits, I don't know, maybe that's a is that like are they like the little
the hats thing, and stuff in the scarf,
sailor looking outfit?
Yeah, it's definitely telling us what it needs to tell us, right? It's telling us that they're lower class,
more working man kind
working people, something dress. Like that. Yeah. All right, so he pulls out his handkerchief, confirms that he is in fact Jonathan Joestar. They acknowledge this. He really is the son of, and then, damn it, you think you're great, huh? Let's get him. Oh, I'm sorry, I want to back up real quick. So for this panel right here, he says, I hate rich smugs. If he's from the Joestars, I swear I'll punch his teeth out. I like that. In the official version is much worse. It says, I hate rich people. I don't have a reason to, but I hate them. I don't need that, like, and maybe, once again, maybe that's like really accurate. If we were reading this in Japanese, that's exactly what he says in Japanese. Even so, I don't want that. He says, I hate rich smugs. That's all I need. He hates them. I don't need this, like, I don't have a reason to, but I do anyway. Like, right. Nobody talks like that. Like, that's not how humans say things. So I just want to point that out. Okay, so they beat him up real good, and once again, we've confirmed that this makes him more heroic, because now we know that he's actually not capable of defending this poor girl, but he has taken their attention away from her, right? So they were picking on her, so he has succeeded at his goal. And he says, you rich kids should play by yourselves within your own property, or within your property. Let's go. And then she tries to help him out, and boom, forget about me. Go somewhere else. I didn't get into this fight because I wanted your attention. I like this. All right, you're laughing. What's going on there?
Oh, it's just kind of funny that he's, he turned so much on her.
Exactly. I like we're getting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, he's probably embarrassed that he just got beaten up, and he doesn't want any more attention brought on him because he, feels like a goof.
And I like the things that we're learning about this character, right? He appears as a hero, then he quickly realizes that he gets beaten up, but rather, we know he's a nice guy because he stood up for her, but he's not being nice to her, right? He's actually being quite aggressive. Even if that's part of it is covering, like you said, he's embarrassed, and so that aggression is helping to kind of cover that embarrassment, but he's not being like a super nice guy. He's not being like the traditional hero or whatever, where he would, of course, be more concerned with her well-being than his own.
He's not reacting in like a typical, or like a, like a, what would you say, like a stereotypical way, or what you would think,
the hero should do in order to be the true hero. And so that makes him interesting. And then we get a little bit of
real too, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I mean, I think that you could see somebody reacting that way,
Oh yes, absolutely. And then we get this panel here where he confirms, or rather we get a clear idea of what his ideology is, that he's going to have the courage to face the odds, even if he's disadvantaged. And then his promise, someday I will win. He's going to get stronger. This is just one setback, but it's not, the end of his pathway. And then he forgot his handkerchief, which allows her to give us the insight of what, because I wouldn't have known that if she didn't spell it out right here. She says, why did you take out your handkerchief? If it weren't for that, they wouldn't have you wouldn't have gotten beaten up. Right. So, like, we know now that, because when he first took out his handkerchief, I just thought, it's just him wiping blood away. But now we know that it was a conscious decision to really make sure that these guys, like, that this guy's not going to pretend that he's not who he is, right? Like, I am Jonathan Joestar.
Yeah. I like the mansion is now like a mile away, whereas earlier it was...
Oh, yes. And, that's kind of that, like, comic booky, even in storyboards, but definitely in comic book, where you do try to be accurate about where you're placing your characters and stuff, but sometimes you do play with space in a way in order to get that storytelling.
That's pretty extreme, though. Although that's a nice panel, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's no words; it's just all atmosphere and like emotion, right? To kind of give us a sense of what she's feeling, what he's feeling, all that sort of stuff. Then, bam. And it's funny because now that you've made me really look at it, I see that the carriage is coming up in this panel. Whereas it's fine that if that carriage wasn't in that panel and it's just showed up in this one, that would be fine. But it's actually established here that there is a carriage going to his house. This is an interesting panel to me. It's just an interesting choice. The nice, like, huge close up of the wheel with him framed down there. It's just an interesting choice. Just a little splash of life. Boom, he notices something massive.
Actually, I mean, the drawing is really good on these pages.
Absolutely. I agree. Yes. Massive panel close to the horses. Let me see what this sound effect is, because it's wham. Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, what this sound effect, is this indicating horse sound? Like, are they neighing, or but it's actually emphasizing just how hard this door is being pushed open. However, is this, like, I think I see what Araki's going for here. He's got us having the horses reacting to this wham, this door, this giant sound effect of the door getting pushed open. But is this actually the best? Is this panel choice the best to indicate how impactful that is? What's your take?
I would say no, because I didn't even realize that that's what was happening.
Yes, I think that's what I also would agree with.
Yeah,
I think like. Go ahead.
Partly it's the way he did the motion lines there. They're very, like, symmetrically, like, I almost thought it was like part of the carriage. So. Yes.
It takes a second to realize that those are effects, not structures.
Yeah. You only need like one or two, maybe,
Yeah, but I can see where he was going. He's trying to say this door is opening so hard, right, that it's moving so fast that these horses are, that's how all the lines that it needed to indicate it. But it's not.
You know what it is, man? I think, like, he was like, man, it'd be cool if, like, the slam from the door opening, like, freaked out the horses, because that's like seems to be where the focus is, right?
Yes.
The reaction, but it's not really like a great angle to show you that the door is slamming open.
Right. So I think you're dead on. What we're actually supposed to know is the door is slamming open, with a supplemental information of it's startling the horses, where it's placing the startlement horses over the actual storytelling that we need to have in order to understand why the horses are being startled. And then we get two shots, which I like. I like this. I like that he's making such a big deal out of this moment, where boom, a suitcase thrown out, hits the ground, and then this really interesting exit out of the like, he's hopping out in this, like, really interesting pose, like he's making a big deal of, like, here's just Dio coming out of the carriage.
It's very flamboyant.
Exactly. Lands, stands up, bam, like, it presumably turns to just look at whoever's outside of the carriage now. I am Dio. That's like, there's no dialogue whatsoever, but he's really showing himself off, And the sound effect here for this one, where it shows his face, is translated as pow. So, like, he's like getting up and pow, striking, like, I am here. Yeah. It's me. And then bam. Deal. Revelation. Yes, Jonathan is there. Who are you? Oh, this must be a Dio Brando, right? Is that my dad took him in? And he's excited. We see how happy he is. He says, so you're Dio Brando. Okay, I want to point something out real fast. So this drawing right here, look at that chin, right? That is a jaw. This is like a classic man jaw, right? Like square jaw. And he's like, we got a nice sort of big physique. Same thing with Dio, right? Dio's got Dio's got some strength on him, right? He's got a tough upper torso, this nice jaw. Now, what will happen is that Hirohiko Araki will change his style over the years and make the characters more and more slight, not as physically imposing. And now that doesn't bother me if that's more characters. But when you go back to draw your main character on the cover of the collection needs to look like the main character. Jonathan Joestar is a beefy, square-jawed dude. I don't know how well you can see that, but this is his modern interpretation of Jonathan Joestar, and that is not the character.
Yeah.
And Araki mentions this in his book where he talks about making manga, where he talked about how as a dude to stay with the times, he needed to change his style, right? Because like he could stay locked in this style forever, but it would be indicative of the 80s where he came from. So he purposely was changing his style to stay relevant with the tastes of modern manga and anime. But don't do that to the main character. That is not Jonathan Joestar is not a slight dude. So that bothers the heck out of me. I want to see this guy. I want to see that jaw because that is Jonathan Joestar. This weak-jawed young man is not Jonathan Joestar.
Yeah.
Bothers me. Okay, so he says, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, this like rendering he's doing is, I wonder how he's doing that. Looks
this weird like kind of wash looking stuff. Yeah,
but it's like on their faces. It's also like in the backgrounds and stuff. Like,
yes,
he's making some interesting choices. Like,
I'm gonna speculate that this is Copic markers, potentially, like what he, because that's what a lot of manga artists use when they're doing their color work, like at the beginning of the pages. So let's just scroll back up real fast and look at what that black and white. Oh, dang it! Oh no, not this. That shouldn't have. That's the problem with using a pirate site. Okay, yes. So you can see like that kind of textury. That's the Copic marker.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what that was.
Just being rendered black and white. No, yeah, I'm almost certain it's marker being just scanned in and its texture changing and stuff. So I'm pretty sure that's what that is marker. But it is really interesting because it, I don't particularly love it on the face, like it's great for this like textury background. But now that you're really making me look at it, like, I don't know, it's just as a black and white, maybe in color it'd look fine, but in black and white, that kind of smudgy, shadowy on his.
Hard to interpret what he was going for there with it. Like, what's he showing? It doesn't really. I mean, are they supposed to be like shadows? Like, I don't know. Anyway. Yeah.
I guess now that you're making me look at it and really interpret this, we can see that there is no rendering on any of. Well, there's a slight rendering right there on his cheek, but we have these nice clear drawings. And then when he needs to, or when he wants to emphasize like intensity, we're getting more of those. That's where this rendering on the characters comes. Because we go back to now. It could just be that this is a smaller drawing, and so he's not as concerned with rendering it out. But I'm assuming he's like rendering this to say, now this moment's that much more, like this is a big moment, and therefore my characters are more, he's doing
a little bit more with the art. Yeah. And I mean, it's part of his probably growth as an artist, like figuring out how the best way to sort of like amp up remember like in Blade
the tension
of the Immortal? Have you read Blade of the Immortal?
I haven't, not at all. I want to.
Oh, okay. Well, in the like earlier volumes of it or earlier issues of it, he would do like, it's pen and ink, but then if there was like a big moment, he would do like a fully rendered pencil drawing, and it was cool, because it really like emphasized the moment because it stood out visually from everything else.
Yes.
So it's like he is doing something extra, but it's just maybe not the best thing to do.
Yeah, and now that you're making me really, it'll be exciting to see how that changes, even within like, let's say 20 chapters, like how does he start to try and capture that moment just within the next couple months of his storytelling. All right, so we get his famous nickname. The whole, the everyone here calls me Jojo because he's Jonathan Joestar, Jojo. And then boom, this dog comes running in,
Oh yeah,
and these two panels, like they're really funny, and I don't know how funny he's trying to make that dog seem, because like that drawing, that running, the open mouth, like everything about it, because it's not great drawing on this dog, but it is really telling you something. Like the energy of this dog that's coming at them, like there's nothing menacing about this dog, I guess is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat, this is a sweetheart of a dog coming up. All right, we get the dog's name, Danny. He says, my dog's name is Danny, and he's very smart. Don't worry, he won't bite. All right, this is where I got to pick on the official translation once again. Because the official translation implies something that I don't like. So in the official one, he says, I'll introduce you. His name's Danny. He's a clever old hunting dog. Don't worry, he won't bite. So the addition of clever old hunting dog specifies age, right? And there's no indication of age here. And I think, like, that's the question. Are we supposed to believe this dog is old or young, right? Like, and because those matter, right? Your interpretation of this dog that's running up, that single word tells us something about what we should think about this character. And then, wham! I'm curious what your reaction was here when you first got here.
Oh, I mean, I was shocked, Like,
yes.
What the heck? He's like knocking his teeth out.
Yes, and now this is part of what I was curious about, because I did remember that he attacked this dog, but I didn't remember how he attacked this dog. And this staging is extremely interesting because it is clear and not clear at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and this is what I was really curious about your brain is how quickly did you figure out exactly what Dio's doing?
Well, I still haven't. I know he's hitting him, but I don't know with what. Like, is that like his knees? Oh, I see. It's his foot there. So that is his knee, right?
Yes. So he's kneeing the dog.
Yeah, his leg. So that his leg is connected to his body there, huh?
Yeah, so we're getting
wild.
We're getting a forced perspective that's not really a great forced perspective, and because the bottom of the foot is cut off, and because all the rendering is kind of the same dark color, it just takes, like, the moment you see it, but it takes a little bit of effort to really engage. I didn't see it
until just now. Yeah, like when I read it, I was just like, okay, I know he's like attacking the dog, but I'm not gonna, confusing art is like one of the most frustrating, or just like confusing storytelling. It's so frustrating. So I just kind of was like, okay, he's attacking the dog. I don't know with what, but.
Okay, so that's why I really wanted to get your take on how this went over for you, because you did get the main story beat. He's attacking the dog. That's what you're supposed to come away with, and he could have helped us by clarifying the action better. But what I do think is that this action is really interesting. That he's not kicking the dog with his foot like most people would. He has kneed the dog, right? It is an interesting attack choice that helps to communicate like the type of creator Araki is going to be, right? Araki makes strange choices, like when Dio jumps out of here. This is an pose, right? When he attacks the dog, this is an interesting attack. And that's what Araki's going to really start to, as Jojo goes on, he's going to start becoming more and more unique in the types of just choices that he makes. And wham! We like Jonathan are shocked. The dog hits the ground. We don't know. I don't know if the dog's dead at this point, right? Did he just break this dog's neck?
Yeah. Right.
And then what are you doing? That's too much.
That's too much. Like a little like kick to the face would have been okay, but a knee is too much.
I'm gonna get the official translation here. He says, "What are you doing? I'll never forgive you." That's the official translation.
Yeah, that's like some John Wick stuff.
Yes, exactly. I do not mind that he says, "I'll never forgive you," but is that really his intention? Because is that really what he's saying? And if he, like, how much are we supposed to believe that he really won't forgive him, right? Because oh yeah, okay, this is the last page, so we don't know what Jonathan's reaction will be. But that's what when the moment you say something, I'll never forgive you, I expect him to live up to that vow, right?
Yeah.
Like when I come in, so this is the end of chapter 1, and when I come into chapter 2, I want to see Jonathan live up to that. Now they don't do that in the unofficial. He just says, "What are you doing? That's too much." So he's not making a huge promise like, "I will never forgive you for just attacking my dog."
Mm-hmm.
So it once again it raises the question of like, which one is the official, which one is closer to what Araki actually intends here?
Yeah.
Right? Is Araki saying that Jonathan is making a declaration, "I will never forgive you for attacking my dog," or is he saying something closer to this? "That's too much. Whoa, hey, I know that was, my dog might have startled you, but you can't be kicking my dog."
Look at his stupid face too. Like he's got this smirk on his dumb face.
Yes. So
I mean, I would never forgive that guy.
yes, exactly. So then we get into Dio's head. This guy's the heir to the Joestar. This guy's heir to Joestar, Mr. Jarstar's only son. Okay, that's 2 sentences. I must destroy him mentally, driving him insane. Soon all of Joestar's will be mine. Like this, we learned this is our introduction to both Jonathan and Dio. But in this chapter of Dio and Jonathan, we've got some really interesting, flow with like what you like, who they are and what you expect, and all being surprised by it. Like we knew that Jonathan was a little. No, not Jonathan. We knew that Dio was a little cold, at least to his dad. But man, when he kicks that dog, like, oh, okay, this is a bad dude. And then we get confirmation of just how bad he intends to be.
Yeah.
And then final shot, dog suffering.
That's what it
says. Come back for issue 2, right? Because this is the end of chapter 1. Like, okay. So it leaves on a pretty powerful moment, like for most people, like we like our pets. We don't want to see people hurt our pets. Mm-hmm. And so to establish the villainy of Dio, all we have to do is have him attack this poor dog.
Yeah.
And all right, I'm on board. Let's take him down, Jonathan.
Right. Well, I mean, that's it's tried and true, right?
Yes. Like in many stories, like, I one of the things I've heard, like in a movie, is you can kill any number of people, but the moment you kill a dog, you lose a certain portion of the audience. Like they're just not going to come back. Like they're out.
Yeah. People don't want to see that. There's something to that for sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna, this is you've only read this one chapter of Joestar, or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. When it ends off here, was this like, were you compelled? You're like, okay, yes, I want to see more of this story.
I mean, I would definitely read more. It was a like little adjustment getting used to like the art and some of the moments that were a little confusing. But I also know that, like, I mean, this is a series that's been running for a long time, right? So I know he's gonna get better, and it's something I've heard of. So I know that there's good things to come, I guess. So.
Yeah, so its reputation gives you confidence that, like, if you kept going forward, that this is going to pay off.
Yeah, like if I didn't know anything about it, I just read this, I don't know if I would keep reading.
Okay, let's explore that though. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not like blown away by the art yet, and like I'm just one of those people, right? Where it's like I would read comics that have good art but bad stories, but not bad art and good stories.
Okay, that's interesting because like I have for some time now, at least, I started to recognize it back in 2010 when I first started becoming a professional. I was in Periscope, so I was surrounded by all these other comic book artists, and that's when I really started to notice that I am the opposite. Like I will definitely read a good story with bad art, but I just cannot move forward if something has the greatest art in the world and a bad story. It has no impact on me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, I can read the art, but like it's impenetrable for me to try and like read the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that's interesting. Opposite.
I think that makes sense too. Like between the two of us, I think like I don't know, man. Like we got tons of art books and stuff, and
Hmm.
like I love the art side of it, and then you know, like as I've gotten older, the more I'm embracing the storytelling.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas, like, I know for some people, it's like I can remember when I was younger working in a comic shop, you know, the owner and then my friend Drew that worked there with me, um, you know, they would read certain comics, like they were into Sandman
Mhm.
and some of the Valiant stuff, which at the time that like Valiant was kind of uh, I don't know, like the stories were I guess better maybe than like Image or something at the time. So I just remember like they would be into certain books and I wasn't interested at all
Mhm.
because I didn't care for the art, you know.
Yeah,
So
I can definitely remember that time period, and to a wide degree, I'm still like that, and that's kind of what I've been sort of just like exploring inside my own self of that the art had to click with me definitely when I was younger, right? Like this when I first tried to read Sandman, it was rough. I really struggled with a lot of those artists. Even though I love Sam Keith, and Sam Keith is he himself pulled himself out of Sandman because he knew he wasn't the right fit. And so when you're, there's some fun stuff that Sam Keith is doing did you ever actually go back and read any Sandman? Did you know that Sam Keith drew Sandman?
I did know that. I never went back and read any of it.
Okay.
I
So
like Sam Keith though. I mean, when he was on the Max.
yeah, that's this, going back to what this moment we were talking earlier where that Dio's dad's face, right? If Araki was drawing, let's just say the X-Men, we would really notice things that bothered us,
Hmm.
right? And so when he draws his own stuff, it doesn't matter. So when Sam Keith draws the Max,
Yeah.
it's all cool because we don't have the only thing we know the Max is what it should look like is it should look
Hmm.
like Sam Keith. Everything is great. But the moment that Sam Keith draws, let's say Morpheus, the main character, Sandman himself, the very first drawing, the first time you ever get to see Morpheus's face clearly, um, it's kind of like this big deal in the comic. Like he's there, but you don't really get to see him. And there's a moment where he turns and like it's straight on with the camera, and he says his first dialogue to basically the reader,
Hmm.
and it's supposed to be cool and powerful,
Yeah.
but he just can't draw a cool looking Sandman,
Right.
and so it's
I think I know the
so
image. It's
okay,
kind of
okay.
goofy looking, right?
Exactly. It doesn't, and that's why Sam Keith took himself away from. He knew I'm not the right fit for this. You got to get a different guy in here who can do the things that you really need. But when you go to the Max, like I don't want anybody else to ever to draw the Max,
Right.
right? I only want Sam Keith because that's the perfect version of his world. And when he draws Wolverine's pretty cool looking,
Yeah.
But when he draws Ghost Rider with his, he does the giant Max boots on Ghost Rider, that is cool to me,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to that. I mean, something that used to always like get me would be, you'd have like somebody like that draws like really cartoony, like would draw like man, what's his name, the Bone guy.
Jeff
Uh,
Smith.
yeah, Jeff Smith. He did. Was it Shazam or something?
Yeah, which I never read.
It just he's not like a typical superhero guy, so
Right.
it just looks really strange.
Yes, I think that's part of the reason why I never pursued it. Well, first of all, I'm more interested in his Crearon work, right? Like I like Bone. I don't know if I necessarily like. Creepshow 314 says it's his birthday today. Apparently,
Oh
Jeff
yeah.
Smith's birthday.
Oh, it's Jeff Smith's
Um,
birthday. Oh, okay.
I guess so. Uh,
Well, I don't care. Happy birthday.
it's one of the, but it's exactly the same thing, right? Where if Jeff Smith draws Bone and draws a bunch of his own stuff, I'm all for it. But the moment he goes into Shazam, it's like, okay, I don't think I like. I don't know. I haven't read it, so first of all, I don't know if the story is something I like. But I also don't think
Yeah.
I am going to like his vision, the literal drawing.
Yeah.
Apparently,
I mean,
Jeff Smith
yeah,
is
I didn't read it.
65 years old,
He's 65. Really? I didn't know he's that old.
which is pretty old.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I mean, I think you can get used to it, right? But like, and maybe that stuff was good, but it is a little bit of, it's a little jarring because they're just not used to
Mhm.
seeing those
Yeah.
characters depicted that way, you know. Um, but yeah, so
Well, you're right. You can get used to it, but it is a barrier that like I would have to overcome, right? And I haven't. I've never pursued it because I'm not interested. Nothing compels me enough to need to overcome that barrier. And Creepshow says that he bought Shazam by Jeff Smith and has never read it.
yeah, it's probably awesome. Yeah,
And maybe it is. And like now that we're talking about it, maybe I will check it out to push myself. But I don't know the character Shazam in the first place, right? Like I never watched any of the movies. I've seen the cartoon with him. I know he's like a kid that turns into a man, but that's like it. So I don't have it. Like for example, whatever Jeff Smith's doing. What's that?
Don't all kids turn into men if they're?
But he can do it like this, and then he can go back to being a kid.
Okay.
So I don't like. Even if I read it, I don't know if he's like if he's doing a take on the character, if he's being faithful to the character. So
yeah, well, I think he probably wrote that as well, right?
I would hope so. Otherwise, then it would be very uninteresting to me. That that's part of the reason why we want to find. I think is auteur the correct version, the word I'm looking for here. That we want to find these people who we're pursuing their vision, no matter where they apply it. Right?
Yeah. Maybe we'll read that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. All right. Let's do that. There you go. We'll put it on the list.
That would be
neither one of us. Yes. That we'll invite Creepshow onto it, and we'll all read it for the first time.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right. So speaking of, let's wrap this up. Move into the next. So next week. So we're going to do this every Thursday. We're going to try and find, ideally, at least something that one of us hasn't read between the two of us, to get like a first take.
Something that neither one of us have read, but both of us own.
Well, one of us has to own it. Yeah. So like, okay, just for it looks like we have one viewer, Creepshow. Even though we're showing these pirated versions, the goal is that hopefully we like what we found enough to have purchased a version of it at some point. So it's not just about piracy. We are actually trying to find things that we love and support the creation of those things.
Sure.
Okay, so up next is going to be something you own, which is, you got it?
Oh, well, I don't remember what story. Did we decide on a story?
So the book itself is a collection of Michael Golden's Batman comics that he did, which I'm not familiar with at all. And so we're going to do issue 19 of Batman Family, which is like from 1978, 1979, I think. Creepshow says now he's got to find his Shazam book. And he says, great, in exclamation, which he's very excited about. He is really looking forward to finding this.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so it's going to be Batman Family, issue 19. You have it in a collection. I'm going to pirate it.
Okay.
I've never read any. So I have read. I started Batman and Detective Comics. So they're running. So back in the old days, it's probably doing the same thing today, but in the 70s there was Batman and Detective Comics, two titles, and they alternate stories. So they force you to buy both of them. And I started in the 70s and I've worked my way up through the 80s. So I have read a number of 70s Batman stories, but I never went into the Batman Family series. So I don't know what that's like. So it's going to be exciting. Like, are those supposed to be, serious in the way that the Batman comics were? Is it supposed to be a more lighthearted effect? Because when the moment I hear Batman Family, I don't know if we're supposed to be as like, yeah, this is the hardcore gritty Batman, just in but we're pursuing Batgirl or Robin stories or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
know anything about Batman Family. Okay, well, we're gonna find out.
Yeah, the only Batman stuff I probably read from that time, and maybe it's before that. Oh no, probably 70s. Like Frank Robbins did a few issues, and
yeah, you talked about him before.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw those. Yeah, that's what I heard, or at least I heard it from you. and I guess I must not, because I started in the late 70s, because I was mainly wanted to get into the 80s of the comics. So I didn't read like all this. I don't know where he was at, because I for certainly didn't I didn't read anything with Ra's al Ghul. And apparently he first appears, Neil Adams's work at run on Batman. I read a couple Neil Adams issues for fun, but I started after that happened, which I really look forward to someday. I want to go back and read that whole story arc.
For sure. Yeah, that was good. I think Frank Robbins before that, but
before Neil Adams.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And we can obviously talk about this more when we get to next week when we're actually on the Batman. But like I saw some really interesting videos, YouTube history on the Batman character moving through the decades, and maybe I'll send that to you just because it's cool, it's interesting, but inform you a little bit about the time periods of what the intention of the character and how he changed and how they were trying to do certain things with him at certain times.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was good.
All right, Jeff. Thanks for being.
Hey, does Jeff know it's Jeff Smith's birthday because both their names are Jeff?
I don't know how he knows that. See ya.
Everybody.